And if you're really unlucky, you'll wind up on the wrong side of the curve. Right. I mean, I think some students actually go into negative probability. I've had people come back who've been gone for 10 years and say, you know, they just get an email out of the blue. Can I finish my senior project with you? The faculty advisor that they had when they were here before, you know, retired 7 years ago. So just do it, right? Just start early. Don't be afraid of it, and be proactive, and it can be a really good experience.
I think I know everyone, but if you don't know me, I'm Matthew Moore. I teach political theory classes in the department. And I agree with virtually everything that already has been said, so I don't want to echo all of it. One thing I tell all of my students that I want to tell all of you is that the project is both easier and harder than you think. You really do already have the skills you need to do a senior project. There is nothing that you don't know how to do that's going to be required for doing the senior project. So it's easier in that sense. And Chris's point about breaking it down into manageable steps is exactly right. And by the way, no problem. Let's give him an A. The kinds of problems that you face in writing a senior project are exactly the same kinds of problems that we face when we write conference papers and journal articles. It's not like it's something about you or the stage of your education or about particular difficulties of being an undergraduate. This is just the nature of the beast. I just gave a conference paper a couple weeks ago on Buddhism and politics, an entirely new area of research for me. I spent about 9 months working on it. I read about 100 sources, and then I realized that almost half of them were irrelevant. Right? That's totally standard issue, just doing a big research project. So don't think, and I guess that's part of a bigger point, which is you will have frustrations in the project, and that's not evidence that something is going wrong. Right? When you say, I can't believe it, and when Julie said, you know, write down everything you read, half of it you're going to end up not using. And many people think, oh, that's terrible, I wasted all this time, but you didn't actually. You learned more about your topic, and you know more about what's relevant and what's not. That's actually all part of the process. It's not an evidence that something has gone wrong. So that's sort of some general points. The project is harder than you think because it takes longer than you think. And Alex actually, I think, is a great example. His project has, we've been talking about it for, what, a little over a year, right? And it's gone from a very, very vague question to a more concrete question to a more concrete question. And then after he started writing, it got even more concrete. You know, that it turned out after the first, you know, couple sections got drafted that he needed to narrow it down again. And it's one of the reasons I asked him to talk today is because he's been so successful about being able to do that and go back and back and back and say, okay, narrow, narrow, narrow. Okay, now I get it. Like, now I've got this clear question. It's been really nice to watch that. If you only have 10 weeks, and especially if you start and all you have is, I liked con law, right? And it's the first day of the quarter. Not only do you not have time to do the work, you don't have time to think. So that you're going to get to week 6, you're going to come up against some roadblock, and instead of that being an experience to learn something about your topic, it's going to be the cause of intense panic. Because you think, crap, I've only got 3 weeks, but it's got to get done now. I don't have time to learn anything about this topic. And that's going to just be a huge bummer for you. So you really, 10 weeks is not enough. You got to leave some more time for that. What Alex said I thought was about exactly right. The spring before, start talking to professors you like, and maybe you talk to 3 or 4 professors and you start narrowing it down a little bit. Narrow it down, spend some time over the summer, maybe read like 1 book or 2 books over the summer. It actually would be enough to get you moving, and then you can make a lot of progress very quickly. A couple of other things I want to echo what other people said about talking to professors at other schools. I think Selena mentioned that. I had just supervised a senior project in the fall, and the student wrote to like 5 of the most famous academics in America who deal with this particular topic and 5 political activists who deal with the topic he was working on, and they all wrote back. And many of them wrote back like 7-page emails with, that's a really great idea, here's the 7 books you have to read, but don't read this one because it's crap, and here's the 3 issues that you haven't thought about, and here's why you're wrong about this point. I mean, it was incredibly helpful. They were very, very generous. So don't be afraid to do that, and at the same time, it turns out people actually really are willing to help. One of the experiences that I've had in supervising projects is that the literature review is the biggest problem for a lot of students. And I think what Julie said is exactly right. It's not a serial book report, right? It's not this author said this. And the way that I suggest to students to do it, and this is just to give you an idea to think about as you're moving forward in this process, is the first sentence of your literature review should be something like, there are 7 major theories explaining this phenomenon, and then you explain what the various theories are. A book report is, here's what makes this book unique. A literature review is, here's what makes these ideas unique, and then here are the major books that explain them. Right? So the literature review is about ideas. It's not about books, or it's not about articles or authors. They're just examples of the bigger issue, which is this various series of ideas. And that turns out to be, I think, one of the hardest things that people come up against. I realize that for many of you, you haven't done a literature review by the time you start your senior project. And that can be intimidating. It turns out, again, to be easier than you think. There's tons of research, sort of resources that are available for figuring out how to do it, and your advisor can really help you down that path by saying, okay, here are the 3 books you got to read, and then that's going to help you move forward. Okay, a couple more pieces, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about specific projects within political theory, just to give you an example about what kinds of things those are. Julie, I thought, was exactly right. No matter what you read, you got to keep track of it. And Selena echoed that, right? You got to write just a little note down. And one of the reasons is so you don't go back and read something irrelevant twice, right? So if you're looking at 50 or 60 sources and you look at one the first week and you say, oh, this is totally irrelevant, it has a misleading title, and you throw it away. And then trust me, 3 weeks later, you're going to come across it in someone's bibliography and you go, oh, that looks awesome. I totally have to go look at that. And you're going to read the damn thing again. And then you're going to say, wait a minute, I've read this before and it was totally irrelevant, right? So you got to keep track, even just to save yourself from wasted work later. And similarly, there's always going to be some idea and you think, oh, I know I read that somewhere. Where was that, right? And it's really, really helpful. It doesn't need to be much. I mean, it can just be like an index card or a couple of sentences that says, oh, this talks about, Maoist groups in Nepal. Okay, now I remember. Now I can go back and find it. So you got to keep track of that kind of stuff. You should expect to write, and I guess this is how I do it. I'm assuming that you guys must be roughly similar. You should expect to write 2 or maybe 3 drafts of your paper. So typically the way I work with people is I get 1 draft. Almost always the first draft I see isn't gradable. There's so much that needs work with it that what I do is just giving advice. The second draft, I offer a preliminary grade and suggestions for what to improve, and then the third draft is the one that actually gets graded. So it may be that other people only do 2 drafts, but it's going to be more than 1 draft. That's going to take you a week or so to make those changes. It's another reason why you need a little bit more time. Okay, so just one quick comment about different kinds of projects. So Annika, I thought that example was great about doing something that's other than a paper. I had a student who did a survey. I think it was last year or the year before, right? The students organized the Get Out the Vote campaign in San Luis Obispo, which was great and very interesting. And that was a collective senior project for several people. So there really is a range of things that you can do. Just because of what I work on, most of my senior projects are papers, but they cover a really broad range. And so almost anything that you're interested in could become a senior project paper. I did a paper on whether the politics of South Park are libertarian. It's actually kind of an interesting topic, and the student spent a lot of time watching South Park and then a lot of time reading political theory. A student was interested in eugenics and wrote a paper about what current theories are about eugenics and genetic manipulation. Students write about religion and public reason, about ethics and individuality, right? There's a whole series of possible topics. So almost anything you're interested in could become a senior project topic, but again, only if you've had some time in advance to kind of narrow that down. One last piece, Professor Arsenault said that senior projects often are helpful to you in later life. It's true, but I think it's the kind of thing that people are inclined not to believe. And so I just want to give you one quick example of that. I have a student who did a very good senior project in the fall, is applying to PhD programs for next year, sent one of the people that he had written to during the process said, I want to see your paper when it's done. He sent it to them. The person wrote back and said, this is such a good paper. I think that this will probably get you into the PhD program that you're interested in going to on its own. Like, this is such sophisticated work for an undergraduate that this is going to get you what you want. So there are true practical applications to this, aside from, I don't know, knowing how to do research and being smarter. So there really are some lifelong benefits to it. I think that's it. So I'll turn it back over to Ron Donato. That's right, for the final comment.